Hello, hello, my name is Clark Heron, aka the Harry Hobo, and welcome to episode 10 of AKA Sports. Yes, we are finally in double digits. As always, with me, my co host with the most, the man simply known as Fletch. Fletch, hopefully your weekend has been good. Hopefully your fantasy teams are doing well. Did they win this last weekend?
We did okay, man. We did okay. I had a better week the week before. So, I mean, I'll take 2-2. We're in 4 leagues this year. I'll take 2-2. I'm undefeated in two of them. I can't really ask too much for more. How'd you do, man?
Not as well as I would like. In the three leagues that I'm in, I am currently 1-2 on the week. But one
Mm.
of those losses was simply because my top two running backs were not playing this week, along with one of my top receivers. So I will take it as one of those necessary losses throughout the year. Having one loss and still being a champion at the end of the year is totally fine by me.
Of
Um,
course.
but as for now, I'm glad to hear that your teams are doing good. We have a lot to get into. Obviously, we have our news and notes from around the world of sports. We have some playoff rankings to update for MLB. We have some college football, NFL, as well as a mystery top 10 to celebrate our 10th episode of AKA Sports. And
It's a
if you
big
are
milestone.
Yes, absolutely. And if you are watching on YouTube or if you're listening, thank you very much. We appreciate everything that you do. If you're wanting to know a little bit more information about us, simply go to either anchor.fm/aka sports or simply find us on Facebook, and that is facebook.com/aka sports FB. So let's go ahead and jump into the news and notes of the week. We'll start off with some NFL quick hitters. Number one, we'll talk about Josh Gordon. He was reinstated by the NFL and quickly signed by the Kansas City Chiefs, which, for fantasy purposes, don't get too excited. This is a 30-year-old receiver. We talked about him a little bit last week, but it is good to see that he is on the road to recovery. Hopefully, he stays that way, and he is currently playing in the NFL. We'll see how quickly he can get back up to speed. Also in the NFL, just today, LaShawn McCoy signed a one-day contract with the Philadelphia Eagles so he could retire from the NFL. And also with the Eagles today, the ownership has given their thumbs up to potentially okay a trade with the Houston Texans to get Deshaun Watson. Again, we don't really know any of the legal battle at this point, nor do we really understand if Deshaun Watson wants to go to Philadelphia. But we'll keep an eye on the situation. Just a little quick note about that. For the big news from the NFL, Fletch, I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure the world of sports have seen this replay over and over and over again. I love the one from the perspective of the fans because how unlucky do you have to be in order to be up 2 points and
Hmm.
time's about to run out? Baltimore's lining up for a 66-yard field goal. Hint, the record was 64, I believe. And Justin Tucker, eh, he doinks it in. How unlucky can that be?
Oh man, that was a good kick though. To be honest,
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
think?
yeah, I mean, you doink it off that bottom bar. Most of the time, it's going to go in, though. We've kind of seen that happen before, too. Either that bottom bar, if you hit the inside of that post, it's when you hit the front of the bar, or if you hit the front of the post, that you get the doink misses. That cost you the game. But that was phenomenal, man. The the NFL analyst mentioned, if you watch the replay, the little hop Justin Tucker put into it before he took his steps to go ahead and kick, gave him a little bit more momentum, put a little bit more umph in it, and yeah, man, signed, sealed, delivered, game over.
Literally one of the best kickers of all time, probably a very first ballot Hall of Famer, even though there's
Oh
only
yeah.
one kicker in the NFL Hall of Fame. That is Mr. Ray Guy. Justin Tucker is on his way to potentially be number two in the Hall of Fame. But congratulations to him and the Baltimore Ravens for setting that record. Absolutely insane. I don't think there's anybody else in the league that could even try to attempt that. We saw that happen the exact same day, I believe. It was the 109-yard return. Uh,
Yeah.
so that was a 68-yard try by the Cardinals. So again, 66 is now the new record. Don't try anything longer than that. It's probably not going to work out. Let's go ahead and move on to the NBA, and I'll toss it over to you, Fletch. What kind of news do we have in the world of basketball?
Well, it's a great day in the world of basketball. Everyone's back. it's training camp season. We got preseason coming up very shortly. For those NBA heads around the world, we got about 3 weeks before the season starts. I believe it's the 19th of October. So right now, you just got guys settling into training camp. As far as what's been on the front lately, as far as training camp news goes, is I mean, first and foremost, you have the Lakers. They kind of been headlining in the news with Russell Westbrook joining, Anthony Davis and LeBron James. Just a little bit of interviews from him. So if you're interested, I would say definitely go check him out. He mentions a few things on how he can contribute to the Lakers as far as giving AD kind of almost a push, if you will, and then also too just basically doing things necessary to help LeBron James and the rest of that crew out. And then also the interesting dynamic between him and Rondo. They had a little encounter last year, and they never really been close. We'll say that much. So a little bit of rivalry kind of turned friendship, and these two guys are, both possibly first ballot Hall of Famers in my opinion, and they'll figure it out. These are two championship caliber players. I know Russell's hunting his first. I know Rondo has two in his pocket, but I'm pretty sure, we can all say Russell Westbrook is really, really chomping at the bit to get his first one, and he'll do anything it takes at this point. So something coming out the Lakers camp. Just a few rumors around the league as far as Russell Westbrook possibly being a Clipper was thrown out there this summer as well, which he had a couple words to say about that, but it is an emphatic no. Basically, is what he said to join the Clippers. So that wasn't going to happen. So a little bit of rivalry still there in Tinseltown, and then also to his ex teammate Bradley Beal. He encouraged his teammate Bradley Beal to leave, but Beal decided to kind of stick it out in Washington. They made a deal with the Lakers, and obviously they brought in some young pieces, which include Kyle Kuzma. So you kind of look at the Wizards now with Bill staying home and seeing how that dynamic will play out. And then obviously the photos, man. You gotta love photo day, right? The one thing that is noted is the Bulls putting their big four on display with DeRozan, Levine, Lonzo Ball, as well as Nikola Vucevic. So very excited for this upcoming season. On the flip side, as we kind of start the season off, we've been getting a lot of COVID vaccination. I guess we say issues. About 90% of the league is vaccinated, which is really good. Very similar to how the NFL was, where most players will be vaccinated. Some are against it, one for religious reasons. Some of them are against it for personal reasons. LeBron James publicly mentioned that he was vaccinated, and it was the smartest thing for him to do at the time for him and his family, which that's what you got to kind of take in consideration is the people around you, and also too, not just professionally but personally, and really trying to have that work life balance that professional athletes always struggle with. But getting vaccinated is always at this point very important topic as we speak. I'm not necessarily for or against it. I won't necessarily go into our opinions about it, but the thing is that there are some things that may cause some teams to may cause some players to possibly miss games that are not vaccinated. So as we start the season, that may be something we kind of start looking into a little bit, since they're kind of ramping up their season for the first time since the vaccination has come out. So that's pretty much the biggest things around the NBA world right now. No major trade rumors, just some mentions of things that happened over the summer, and then just a lot of anticipation and excitement about this upcoming season. And this one is going to be a doozy, Clark. We got a lot of rest from the guys, minus some of those Olympic guys, but I'm pretty sure their teams will make sure they're taken care of. There was a little bit less movement this offseason than usual, so a lot of teams are intact as they were last year, which I'm really excited about because that just makes for better basketball when you have better chemistry. And then also too, just something to point out: the Raptors are moving back home. If you remember last year, they played in Florida. They will be playing in Toronto this season. So they're going back to the north, and we'll see how that impacts them with their see if they can rebound from their dismal season last year. So
Y-
just a
yeah,
few
go
things.
ahead. Yeah, no, definitely some great news and notes there. I will piggyback just a little bit off your vaccination. There was a report from the NBA that stated that any unvaccinated players that had to sit out would not be paid. Andrew Wiggins was the biggest name that I saw in that article, that he is unvaccinated, and he said he would get vaccinated if he was forced to. Um, Did you know of any other big names that are out there that are currently unvaccinated that will continue to stay unvaccinated and maybe potentially lose out on a payday?
I mean Kyrie Irving, Bradley Beal, I believe is unvaccinated as well. I mentioned him earlier. Kyrie Irving is the one I think that's making a few waves, Clark, as far as not wanting to be vaccinated. He is at training camp, so I mean it's not a question on if he's going to be available. No, he's fully available, and let's hope he doesn't sit out as many games as he did last year because I think we all saw how important home court advantage was last year with that Brooklyn Milwaukee series and going 7 games. So I'm pretty sure this year that a lot of these teams will try to push the limit with that. So I guess just be on the lookout for not only Andrew Wiggins but also Bradley Beal, also Kyrie Irving. Just kind of a, I wouldn't say this is too bold, but we kind of know how Kyrie Irving moves, right? At this point, we know he's, I wouldn't say weird. I don't like calling people that. He is different. I respect him still. I understand that he likes to put personal life in front of work life, which is, I honestly believe a lot of us should do a little bit more of. But I think what happens is it kind of gets lost in the fact that does he really care a lot or enough about the team and the game to show up. But there's other issues at hand that he wanted to address, and rightfully so. Who are we to criticize? You know what I mean? So that is the one name though that I would look at that may have to sit out games due to not being vaccinated. So I just want to kind of throw that out there and be on the lookout. If you're a Kyrie Irving fan, if you're a Nets fan, if you're just interested in the NBA in general, it may have some impact on the Eastern Conference playoff race, and hopefully when it comes to the playoffs in April, it won't be an issue. But be on the lookout for that. There may be some players missing games that just refuse to be vaccinated.
And yeah, and just like you stated, we're neither for nor against it here at AKA Sports. So if they choose to stay unvaccinated, that's totally fine. But just as you mentioned, any type of big names might be sitting out, might be losing a couple paychecks here and there. So we'll
Right.
keep an eye out as as the NBA season begins and progresses. We'll see exactly what's going on. A little bit more into a little bit lighter news. Fletch, go ahead and take this one away. Apparently, there's a little bit of news in the MMA or boxing ring that you wanted to bring up.
I guess you could say a little bit of both. Tyron Woodley got his tattoo. I love Jake Paul, so he had to have the loser of this fight, the Jake Paul Tyron Woodley fight, had to go ahead and get the tattoo of "I love" the other fighter that they lost to on any part of their body, but it had to be visible. So Tyron Woodley, being slick as he is, went on and got the tattoo on the inside of his middle finger. I love it. I love it
Classy,
because
classy.
oh yeah, for sure. This should guarantee us a rematch. Jake Paul said if you get the tattoo, then I will accept the rematch. We know he flirted with the whole retirement thing. That was fake, but let's hope that he does so. And also a little bit of Jake Paul news as well. He is slightly or trying to get a little bit into the promoting game. So just be on the lookout for that and promoting MMA fighters. So as we talked about in previous podcasts, there is a new MMA league that's supposed to be starting up in a few years, couple years technically at this point. Also, UFC has kind of been under fire a little bit for underpaying some of their athletes. So just be on the lookout for Jake Paul possibly because he's been coming at Dana White pretty tough. Kind of a little bit of controversy or drama, if you will, in the fighting world, and then just some other news in the fighting world too. We'll touch more onto it next week, but we do have the Fury Wilder matchup coming up, not this weekend, but next weekend.
Yeah, and we'll definitely keep in touch with that. But as for the tattoo, we were planning on showing it until I saw exactly which finger it was. So if you want to search for it, there are ways to find it. Do
Indeed.
not fret. Let us go ahead and move on from the news and notes to the MLB wild card situation. First and foremost, congratulations to the St. Louis Cardinals, who, as of yesterday, won their 17th straight in a row. They did lose last night, so they didn't quite get to 18, but it doesn't matter. They clinched the wild card spot, clearing a way into the playoffs. They will await basically the loser of the West or the NL West between the Giants and the Dodgers. It will be, I think, I saw a graphic last night. I think it's the fifth or sixth team since the inception of this extra wild card spot that will have to host a wild card game, even though they won 100 or more games. Which obviously the Giants or the Dodgers, both of them well over 100 at this point. One of
Yep.
them will be hosting this game against the Cardinals. But once again, congratulations to them. 17 straight is pretty insane, to say the least. As for the American League, we are kind of in a little bit of a log jam, I guess you could say. It's between four teams, two spots remaining. Currently, the Yankees have a one-game lead in the top spot, ahead of Boston Red Sox. Behind them is a half game for the Mariners, who are off tonight, and then the Blue Jays are one game behind Boston as well. Currently, the Yankees and Yankees and the Blue Jays are currently tied in the bottom of the fourth inning tonight. The winner is that would be a big win if the Yankees can get that, or definitely for the Blue Jays. At this point, the Mariners, even though they are off, are definitely hoping that the Yankees can win that game. And then as for Boston, currently down 3-1 in the middle of the fifth inning against the Baltimore Orioles. Again, there was one post that I saw that there could be a potential four-way tie if things play out exactly as they need to over these last four games. It'd be very interesting to see if that actually happened. But as a Yankees fan, I hope not. But we will keep you updated next week, and we actually should know exactly what the playoffs are like and put our playoff predictions in before the first game gets started. Moving forward to college football, a Week 5 AP poll is listed if you're on YouTube. You can see it. If you are listening to us, I'm sure you've seen it, but I'll go ahead and rattle it off. Number 1, Alabama. Number 2, Georgia. 3, Oregon. Nothing changed there. 4, Penn State. 5, Iowa. And then number 6, Oklahoma, fell back a couple spots after their close win last week. Then you have number 7, Cincinnati. Number 8, Arkansas. Number 9, Notre Dame. And number 10, Florida. Fletch, before we really do a deep dive into college football this week, any surprises in this top 10? Maybe a team that's outside the top 10 that should be in, or maybe a team that's in the top 10 that maybe shouldn't be there?
No, no surprises. I really like the top 10. In the AP poll, especially over the coaches poll, the biggest difference in the AP poll and the coaches poll currently is Oklahoma. I mean, we can kind of go down to the bottom of these polls and kind of flip Ohio State, Florida, Arkansas around a little bit, but I mean, you just kind of stick with the meat and potatoes here. Oklahoma, I mean, they're struggling. They had a couple tough games this season. Opener was tough, and then you turn around and you had a tough game last week as well. And these are against teams they really should be putting away, as highly ranked as they are, as highly touted as they are. The quarterback there just being, as highly valued or as highly ranked as he is in the whole scheme of things. So I mean, I guess it's surprising that they failed because they didn't win big, but it's not surprising that they failed due to that, if that makes sense. So no major surprises. I love Penn State and Iowa at 4 and 5, though. I do want to throw that out there.
Yeah, and we'll see them battle each other. I believe next week is when they'll play over in Iowa. As for this week, we have a couple of really big top 10 matchups. Number 2, Georgia is at home against number 8, Arkansas. KJ Jefferson has been absolutely stellar for Arkansas. This will be a tremendous test. Again, we talked about Arkansas' schedule over the next 3 games now, exactly how big of a test it was. They were able to handle Texas A&M this past week. They get a stellar defense in Georgia. It's going to be very interesting. There was a news about JT Daniels for Georgia that he was dealing with a minor knee injury. It didn't seem like it was going to keep him from this game, but just something to keep an eye on, obviously, with big ramifications here. Obviously, Georgia needs to just continue to win, while Arkansas, they've got everything laid out in front of them. If they win out, they are going to be easily into the SEC championship game as well as potentially into the playoffs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Arkansas is on a tear right now. They, like you said, KJ Jefferson looks good. The team overall looks good. I love what they did against A&M, holding them to 10 points. So shout out to them. They are a force to be reckoned with. Now, kind of goes back to, how good is Georgia, right? I mean, you can kind of take a look at the line. I always look at the line because the line, that's Vegas, but they're trying to tell us, how many points say one team is favored by. Right now, if I'm looking at this, yes, that's eight. That's an 18-point line. Even though Arkansas is ranked eighth right now, Georgia's second, they still think that Georgia will win by 3 touchdowns. How do you feel about that right now, Clark?
That seems like a lot. I can understand why you would put like a double digit on it simply because it's in Georgia, but
Right.
I think Arkansas is going to make it much closer than that line suggests, especially with Georgia's offense. We really don't I haven't really seen the best of the best yet.
Right.
They've been good at times, but really their defense is what their shining spot is on their team. I would really love to see more of a complete offensive put together. Maybe this is the game they do it, but definitely seems a little bit of a disrespect towards Arkansas at this point, and I'm sure they will put that on their shoulder and use it as a chip in this game.
For sure. I think so too. That's a bit low. I guess let's dive into a few matchups here really quick. There's one matchup that's very, very intriguing to me, Clark, and we kind of talked about this team a little bit, and that's Iowa. It's next week they play Penn State, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so they have a test this week. Maryland has the younger of the Tagovailoa brothers, and they are 4-0 right now. They look pretty good. They haven't really played much fierce competition yet, but at the same time, this is a Friday night game. It's not something that you see every day in college football, especially not for a big name program. In addition to that, the game is in Maryland, um, College Park. So let's just I want everybody to really kind of tune in this game. The both Friday matchups are something that I really would like to see. Are we putting Iowa on upset alert this week, Clark?
It's very potential. This could be a little bit of a trap game. Typically, a trap game is usually against a team that is a little bit of a struggle that you kind of look over. So it may not truly fit the true definition of what a trap game is because Maryland's been playing so good so far. But if Iowa is caught ahead looking towards that Penn State matchup at home, it
Exactly.
wouldn't surprise me all that much.
Facts. They are not the only ranked team that has a trap game on Friday night on the road. We have BYU at Utah State, who's 3-1 right now. The line on that game, let me back up a little bit. The line on both these games are fairly tight. The line on the Iowa game is just three. Vegas thinks Iowa's going to win by three points. You take the over under on that, and then they have BYU as a 9.5 point favorite. So essentially, a field goal and a touchdown is what we're looking at here. So both of these games are slated to be at least somewhat close games for sure. I personally would take the over on both these games for the ranked teams, but I'll say this. Let's I would not be surprised if both of them lose. I'll say that.
Wow. So are you going to call the straight out loss then?
No, I'm calling wins for both ranked teams, but I would not be surprised. I'm rolling with Iowa and I'm rolling with BYU. I really like both of these teams. I think BYU is just one of those teams, man, that they'll fly under the radar until the end of the season, and then when we roll out these playoff rankings, depending on how 1 through right now the 13th, depending on how 1 through 12 currently finish the season, is going to have a lot to say on where BYU would be ranked. And keep in mind, college playoff ranking is different than the AP poll and the coaches poll. That is, the committee, the playoff committee's ranking. They don't really take a lot to account as far as those polls are concerned, but they don't completely deviate from those. So just keep in mind that BYU could either rise or fall once that comes out. Just want to mention that too, because that's kind of a them winning this game and possibly going undefeated. They may be one of those non-power five schools that will have a lot to say, like Cincinnati or UCF did in the past.
It's very possible. Again, the committee is looking at teams right now, trying to figure out exactly who they are. Are they truly a good team? Have they battled it? Are they struggling at times on different sides of the ball? That's exactly what
Mhm.
they're looking for. So again, with BYU and Iowa as well, these are the type of games that they're going to keep a close eye on because if you drop the ball here, it's definitely going to affect exactly who the committee thinks you are moving forward in their rankings. Moving on to our next ranked game within the top 10. It's really the game of between two teams, at least in my opinion, are show me who you truly are. This is going to be a huge game for the committee to be watching both of these or both of these teams. It's going to be number 7 Cincinnati at number 9 Notre Dame. Again, these are the teams that I've seen when I've watched both of them. We've seen Cincinnati play good this year, and we've also seen them struggle at times this year. We saw them struggle against Indiana was the most notable one, and then for Notre Dame, they've struggled multiple times against Toledo. They barely won. They struggled in the first half against Wisconsin, but it was that second half that we really saw I think the true sense of what Notre Dame can do if they really put everything together. And this is exactly what the committee is looking at. These are two great examples of teams that Most of the time, they're kind of just not really putting everything together. I would like to see this game really see the best from both of these teams. I
Yeah.
still have Notre Dame winning it because I think with what
Mm.
I saw in the second half against Wisconsin, if that's the Notre Dame that we see on Saturday, watch out because I think Cincinnati's defense can play well, but it's going to be very interesting game. But again, I'm really kind of hoping that uh, that we're going to see two teams that are going to bring out the best of themselves in this game, not only for themselves but also for the committee in weeks to come.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm excited about this one, man. This is going to be one hell of a football game, I think. I mean, you got two top 10 teams going at it, one independent, one group of five. So the amount of weight on this game is more than your Georgia Arkansas, in my opinion, more than your Alabama Ole Miss, or even the Big Ten matchup that we have this week. I believe it's Michigan, Wisconsin. Even though Wisconsin's a little bit out the running right now, Michigan still is. So this game to me has a lot of weight. I agree with you. I think Notre Dame does have a more of an identity, and I think you could really say their defense is their calling card. We saw that defense take over again against Wisconsin in the second half, especially in the fourth quarter. Close game, then all of a sudden, two pick sixes, a few turnovers later, game's blown wide open. But the thing about Notre Dame is this, Clark, and for those at home that have been watching Notre Dame play, they always seem to start slow. And then sometime during the second half, you mentioned against Toledo, you mentioned against Wisconsin, the first game of the season as well against Florida State, that overtime game. They were down, or yeah, they were down pretty big against Florida State, if I'm not mistaken. Is that it was like 18-point deficit
I
at one
believe
point?
so. Yeah.
Yeah, came back unanswered, a whole bunch of unanswered points and took the lead. And then I think Florida State sent it in overtime. And then after that, they took care of business in overtime. Notre Dame did. So I'm expecting fireworks on this game, man. I'm trying to remember the kid's name as we speak, but Notre Dame has a safety that may very well go top five in its upcoming NFL draft, maybe top 10, just depending on how the season plays out. So just be looking for that defense. He's been a force to be reckoned with, along with that entire crew. And then on the flip side, you have Cincinnati, who's very stout as well. Again, as we mentioned, too, undefeated. And then the quarterback there, you have Ritter. I'm sorry, not Riddler. Ritter behind center there, who's been playing pretty well as well this season. So the line on this game is very interesting. I know you picked Notre Dame. The line on this game is just 1.5 points. So we're talking about less than a field goal at this point. As far as the winner's concerned, that means Vegas doesn't even know who the hell is going to win this one.
Yeah, it's a very close game, and just as you mentioned earlier, this really has a big weight on this game for either team because whoever wins this game, the rest of their schedule is at this point doesn't have any other ranked opponents on their schedule. So this is it. This is what
Yeah.
defines your season right here, right now. And if again the committee's watching, if you put together a complete game and you look great on both sides of the ball and do exactly what you need to and get this win, they're going to look very highly favorable for you, especially since you don't really have any other strong competition the rest of the way. So,
Oh
big
yeah.
implications there in Notre Dame. We'll keep a very close eye on that. Other notable games this week coming up. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on Oklahoma. They've been struggling of late. They'll be playing at Bill Snyder Family Stadium against Kansas State. Always a tough place to play. Hopefully, they
Yep.
can actually put together the offense that I think the committee is looking for, which is a very high explosive type of offense. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Another ranked matchup. We got Ole Miss versus Alabama, and again, I still think Alabama's going to win this game, but Ole Miss is going to put up some points. I think this is going to be, if you watch the Florida Alabama game, it's going to be very reminiscent of that. Both teams can score. That's going to be a high scoring affair. I don't think we're going to see the truest, maybe not the overly best defense that Alabama can handle just because or can play because of Ole Miss's offense being that good. But I expect Alabama to handle things at home. I assume you think the same way, Fletch?
I do. I do. I like Alabama to go ahead and handle this at home. They're two touchdown favorites in this game. I think they'll win by about that much, if not a little bit more. But I do think the game will be close, at least to begin with, and I think the score won't dictate how close the actual game is if we're sitting back watching it at home. Um, Clark, I just want to throw this out here. This is a two TV Saturday, if you will, for my guys at home. If you have two televisions, you'll need them both. You will need them both. We got Friday. We got ranked matchups at the same time. We got Saturday. We have the 12 o'clock slate. Another notable game to mention is Michigan and Wisconsin at the same time as Arkansas and Georgia. Moving on to 2:30 and 3:30 slots. You got Cincinnati Notre Dame at 2:30, and then Ole Miss and Alabama at 3:30. I know y'all don't want to miss these games. Oklahoma State or Oklahoma at Kansas State. That's at 3:30. The only one that you'll probably be able to watch in peace is Florida Kentucky, which is another tough game on the schedule. Kentucky's playing well; they're undefeated, and Florida is at on the road and only a 7.5 point favorite in this one. So, I do like Bama to win this game against Ole Miss, just as you do. I do think they handle business. I do want to ask you, how do you feel about Florida versus Kentucky this week?
I think Florida's going to handle business there. I know it's in Kentucky. Again, I think Florida is just too good. They showed a lot of promise when they played Alabama, really kind of hanging in there for the most part. Couldn't quite get it done. I think, again, properly ranked at number 10, they can easily handle their business in the SEC East. If they can handle Georgia, I think they're still on their schedule coming up. That's going to be really the telltale sign for Florida. But as of right now, yeah, I think they got this game handled.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I would think so as well. Um, I guess there's one other game that I did want to go over. We've mentioned it a couple times, and I'm going to go ahead and throw this team an upset alert. Let me know if you agree. That is Michigan visiting Wisconsin. Wisconsin has lost. They're 1-2. Doesn't sound good, but when you look at their losses, they've lost to Notre Dame on a neutral field, and then their other loss is to Penn State opening week. Is that right?
I believe so. I have
So
to
their only
pull
two
it.
losses are against top 10 opponents, specifically top 9 opponents. And then now you're playing against a Michigan team who really hasn't played anybody but has crushed the teams that they are supposed to crush. So, kudos to them being at 14 due to that. But I do think this is going to be a doozy. It's a noon game, which I believe should be on Fox for the big noon
It is
game.
not. It is on Big Ten Network.
They
Oh
moved it.
no, no,
Okay.
no. You're right. It is on Fox.
Is
I
it on
was reading the
Fox?
next
Okay.
week.
Okay. We're good then. We got big noon game on Fox. That's always exciting. And then like I said, we got undefeated going into Wisconsin at Cat Randall Stadium. So I'm excited about this one. I don't know necessarily which Wisconsin team we're going to see. I'll be honest, I'm not sold on the quarterback, but it is at least a formidable opponent for Michigan. And I'm putting Michigan on upset alert, and I'm actually going to pick Wisconsin to win this game.
Wow. Okay. I wouldn't go that far. I would still have Michigan winning this game, but it is a hostile environment. But it is
Mhm.
noon. It would be different if it was an 8 o'clock game where the students were going to be filing in. I don't think the crowd's going to be quite into it for noon. I could be wrong. They're always ready to jump there in Camp Randall, but uh, again, like you mentioned, we're not sure exactly which Wisconsin team we're going to see. The
Right.
quarterback play isn't really up to par, and the two ranked teams they've played so far, they've lost to, and Michigan was ranked last time I checked, so I would have Michigan winning this game. But still, very interested. We'll definitely keep an eye on this one just in case we see a much better Wisconsin come out. I know
Yeah.
Michigan's been playing very, very good. Definitely a
Mhm.
game worth keeping an eye on.
Last quick little tidbit on that before we move along here. Wisconsin is actually favored in this game by 2 points.
Wow.
So
That
that is something to look at
that's surprising since they're
a
not
little bit.
ranked. Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably have Michigan as the favorites, and I thought I was picking the upset this whole time. In Vegas's eyes, I'm picking the favorites. So, that's one game I'm going to tune into. That's going to be on one of the TVs that I have.
Yeah, definitely a multi-screen weekend.
It is.
Speaking of college football, let's do a little quick buy or sell when it comes to the actual conferences themselves. We're looking for the total package, really from top to bottom, conferences that we truly believe in that have done well so far this season, or even conferences that are not doing well. Let's go ahead and bring up the first one. Let's talk about the SEC. I think I know where you're going to put them. Is this a buy or a sell for you, Fletch?
This is a buy, a strong buy. I feel like every year this is probably a strong buy. They have a lot throughout the entire top 25, even those teams a little bit outside the top 25 are at least to be respected. I mean, we know it's the best conference in football. Just to be frank, and you have some really good teams throughout. For instance, the SEC West currently has, out of their 7 teams in that division, 5 of them are ranked. So that, and then one of them that are not ranked are 3-1, for crying out loud. So that goes to show you, man, that's a very hard or tough conference, top to bottom. And I just want to mention Alabama really quick. I was watching it. I don't know if you were watching the Monday night telecast with Eli and Peyton Manning. Nick Saban was there during, I believe, the third quarter, and Peyton Manning threw a joke out there and said, half the league comes from Alabama. So that just goes to show you, man. Like, Peyton Manning knows being an SEC guy, Eli's an SEC guy, Nick Saban being at Bama all these years, and I mean, it's just top to bottom, man. It's an incredible conference, and currently you have 4 teams in the top 10. If you want to throw Ole Miss out there and Texas A&M, then you have 6 teams in the top 15. It's a hell of a conference, man. What about you?
Yeah, definitely a buy from top to bottom there. Clearly, the most depth out there. There is another conference that can, at least at this point, based on wins and losses, can compete with that. Let's
Yep.
move on to the Big Ten. Is this a buy or a sell?
This is also a buy. This is also a buy. I really like the Big Ten this year as well. I think Ohio State not really looking as good or as sharp as I feel like they should has opened the door for other teams. But if you just take a look at the Ohio State even, and then look at the teams in front of them, which is Penn State and Iowa, who we mentioned meet in a week or so. Then you have Michigan and Michigan State, as well. So the one thing I will mention, it looks like the Big Ten West will be Iowa's for the taking. I just don't see anyone there to really reckon with them, especially with the major injury to um, Minnesota's running back. I think that was the only team and or even Wisconsin's quarterback play not being up to par. Those were the 2 teams that I think could have made more noise in the Big Ten West. But if you look at the Big Ten East, it's very similar to the SEC West, where you have multiple teams throughout the top 25. Very good conference top to bottom. We'll see how that shakes out. Again, we mentioned the SEC being the best team, best conference in college football. Big Ten has always been a clear cut second for, I would say, at least the last 5 years.
Correct. Yeah. Again, just as you mentioned, a lot of teams ranked highly ranked at this point. There are a lot of teams moving up within this conference, so they're record-wise are actually technically tied overall with the SEC, but a lot of games yet to play. We'll see how it shakes out, but definitely a buy at this point. Let's move on to the AAC. Including Cincinnati, along with some other teams. This is a buy or sell for you.
Yeah, I'm on the fence with this one. I guess when we do these buyer sales, we're kind of, trying to say, say we're buying the toughness or the how impressed we are, how good this conference may be, right? So, for because they are not a Power Five school, yet they still have a top 10 team. They have 2 other teams that are very formidable opponents for anybody in the country, in SMU and Houston. I'm going to go ahead and go with the buy on them. I like UCF still. I mean, they're well coached. I also like Memphis. If you keep up with NFL, Memphis is almost turning into like a miniature version of running back U. It seems like send a new one to the league every single year. So I do like this team or this conference. I'm sorry. I'm going to say buy because the expectation for them is not as high as your Power Five conference, and I do think that they are actually better. I wouldn't say necessarily completely better, but if not better, at least on the same par as some of these other Power Five conferences. And then to me, that is a win.
Yeah, having Cincinnati ranked so high up front, and they've always had one or two teams within the top 15 in the last several years. Definitely a very good conference. You could argue, based on the depth, you could be more of a sell, but uh, it's hard because they're not always going to have a ton of ranked teams, unfortunately. Even though they are a very strong conference, and if you play any one of those teams, you better be ready because they are ready to win any given Saturday. Um,
Sure.
let's move on to the ACC. Again, we've seen a little bit of a fall from Clemson. I would put them as a hard sell. Fletch, do you agree?
If I could put them as an even harder sell, I would. Um, man, I'm gonna just keep it real. We're just gonna be blunt with this one. This is a very bad conference. I'm just gonna say it. Even if Clemson had just the one loss and against Georgia, and they were still, hovering. Say if they win against NC State, and you're still just like holding on for dear life with that one loss, and hopefully you turn it on some way in the middle of the season, get a big win against, say North Carolina in the championship game, which doesn't even look like much anymore. But I mean, that's kind of what you were hoping for to kind of boost your resume if you're Clemson. At this point, man, I mean, their highest ranked team in the AP poll for crying out loud is North Carolina State, simply off the strength of beating Clemson. I mean, if they don't beat Clemson, are they ranked? No. Wake Forest they're literally the last three ranked teams. NC State at 23, Wake Forest at 24, and Clemson at 25. And Florida State's awful. This is a terrible conference, Clark. North Carolina, who was my ACC favorites, they actually still have a freaking shot, but they're not even good either. So it's a very hard. So Miami was ranked coming into the season and gets absolutely destroyed by Alabama, which everybody thought at least would be a decent game, maybe through the first half. It wasn't even decent through the end of the first quarter. This conference needs some help. This conference needs some rejuvenation. I've never seen the Florida State conference this bad in my years. So it's a very, very, very hard sell for me.
Agreed. Yeah, this conference, there's a big difference between the SEC or the Big Ten or any other conference on a good year, kind of beating
Yeah,
up on one another and still having some ranked teams, but having a couple of one or two lost teams. This is literally like three or four lost teams, and they're just nobody really wants to step up and win this conference. Really, at this
exactly.
point, it's sad. It's unfortunate there's not really true competition coming out of it. Very likely, I think at this point we can pretty much shut the door on any one of them making it into the final six. Uh, but stranger things have happened in college football over the years. But again, I don't think it's going to come out of the ACC.
You,
Let's talk
you,
about another conference, the Big 12, probably the smallest of
yes,
the Power Five schools. For me, it's difficult because there are a few teams that are ranked, but they're not playing overly great. And then there's Texas that is starting to turn it on a little bit. For me, I would lean more towards sell at this point. But when you look at it, I found a chart earlier today. I shared it with you. The overall wins and losses of each conference, the Big 12, actually it's 28 and 11 right now. They're actually good, but there's nothing overly exciting. Am I on the outside looking in here? Or what's your thoughts?
I think that's a good fact because I think it makes us put this into perspective, right? As far as maybe how good this conference really is, or how good this conference may not be. I'll be honest, it's really hard to say right now. Right now, they are a sell for me. I just don't see a title contender. As much as I would love to say Oklahoma's a title contender, I just don't see it. They don't pass the eye test for me, and they're barely winning these games that you're seeing Bama play similar opponents and just decimating them. Georgia, same way. Like they're beating the teams handily that they're supposed to. They're not just eking these wins out at the last minute like Oklahoma is right now. So granted, Oklahoma, they could find themselves down the road kind of turning some things around. But overall, I'm going to sell on this conference for the simple fact is this: there's 10 teams in this conference right now, and six of them lost this past weekend. West Virginia and Iowa State, who I actually thought were pretty solid, both took L's this weekend, and just don't look as good as they perceive to be. And then also too, like I mentioned at the top, I mean, outside of Oklahoma, it is Baylor a threat? Is Oklahoma State a threat? Is Texas, who you mentioned, is turning it on now? Are they a threat? The Kansas State game coming up for Oklahoma, will that show us maybe how good Kansas State is, or will that show us how good Oklahoma is? They are a slight sell for me right now. I don't think it's a bad conference, but we kind of mentioned it. When you're a Power Five conference, we expect a little bit of a higher standard from you. Um, I'm just not seeing it. I mean, outside of like we compare the ACC and with the Big 12, we compare those two conferences to the American Conference, Clark. I mean, I would pick Cincinnati to beat everybody out of both of these two conferences, and I think teams like Houston SMU, and Memphis could cause havoc in these other conferences right now as well. And I think if they were in these other conferences, they may actually be ranked like Baylor and like the Oklahoma States of the world. One thing about Texas, I do love their running back. I just want to mention that, but I would like to see them translate to a few more wins. Coming up here, and showing that Arkansas loss was simply just that, man. They lost to a good team.
Yeah, and we're going to see exactly probably the two of the three best teams in the Big 12 play next week when the Red River rivalry renews itself at noon on
Nice.
ABC. So we'll keep an eye on that. But I agree at this point, still haven't really seen the best of the best. We'll see exactly what happens over the next couple weeks to see if this conference can turn it around. Last but not
Sure.
least, and well, depending on your view, could be least, is the Pac-12. Again, I know exactly where I would put these put this conference. Where are you putting this conference?
if it wasn't for Oregon, they'd be right there with the ACC, man. Um, I was high on this conference actually. I had USC as my favorites out of this conference. They laid an egg. Clark, if I'm not mistaken, you had Utah. Is that right?
I did, and they have struggled against teams that they shouldn't be struggling against.
Yeah, I mean both USC and Utah are 2-2, but they both should be Pac-12 contenders, and they're honestly right now they're just not. Oregon looks good. And also the was it Tibbs? Shout out to him. He started his own cryptocurrency, but also too he is projected to be if not the top player drafted, possibly top three. We see that happen with a lot of defensive linemen, specifically edge rushers nowadays with the Bosa brothers and Chase Young in recent memory for me. But yeah, I would put these guys or this conference really maybe slightly above the ACC and then slightly below the Big 12, or if not on the same par. I do think being out west, there's a little bit of recency bias where I think an Arizona State team could be ranked right now. I also think an Oregon State team could possibly be ranked right now as well. But we'll see how that shakes as we move forward. I do think Oregon is a clear cut favorite, and I think Oregon is actually a decent title contender as well with that running game that they have. They have a senior, I believe, a senior transfer quarterback that is very a game manager like. It doesn't make a lot of mistakes, and then the defense is there. We saw it firsthand against Ohio State. I'm sorry, where they kind of stifled that offense a little bit. So shout out to Oregon, but Pac-12 is a sell for me.
Yeah, I agree. It's pretty much top heavy with only Oregon. Everybody else is kind of playing the ACC game and kind of beating up on one another and not really making the conference as a whole strong. But again, what's going to hurt Oregon at the end of the day is most of these teams probably won't be ranked by the time they play them. And
Right.
if you get a loss late in the season, it might put you on the outside looking in, depending on what happens with the other teams. So we'll keep a close eye on the Pac-12. Uh, Before we move on to the NFL Week 3 schedule, let's go ahead and thank our sponsor, Legit Framing. Once again, you've got stuff that you want framed, signed memorabilia, signed jerseys. Maybe you want your high school, maybe you want your college jersey framed. You can sign it yourself. That's fine. We can frame it for you. We can put in some player photos, some team logos, maybe even a nice little plaque, or even a baseball. We can put those in there as well. We can frame it for you, make your man and/or woman cave just look absolutely amazing. So when you have these viewing parties and you have these multiple screens going, they can look around and be these wonderful conversation pieces for you and yours. If you want your free quote, simply go to facebook.com/legitframing or send us an email at legitframing@hotmail.com. Again, Legit Framing, create your next conversation piece. So let's move on to the week 4 of the NFL schedule. It is currently on your screen if you were watching on YouTube. Uh, if you want to bring it up during the podcast, again, don't do it while you're driving. That's just crazy. Currently, right now, there is a game going on between the Bengals and the Jags. The rest of the schedule is kind of screening through. We picked out the six, basically the best games that are out there, the most competitive games. Um, the other game that we did not pick that I will say we should mention is the coming home party. The Tom Brady, the GOAT, is going home to New England to face off against the Patriots. So we have the GOAT versus the Brain game. Other than that, let's go ahead and move into our pick six for the week.
Yes, sir.
Last week we both did great. 5-1 for the week. Congratulations for again not allowing me to gain yet another game on you, but we will move on as we can see. So we have the 6 games listed in front of us. We have first the Cardinals versus the Rams, a very highly talented game. This is a first division game for the NFC West. Kyler Murray has been nothing short of impressive this year, but so have the Rams. The Rams look like NFL's top team at this point. I am going to go ahead and make my pick. I have chosen the LA Rams to win this game. Fletch, who do you got?
Right there with you. We got the LA Rams on this one. I just think they got a little bit too much, and they go ahead and pull this one out. I do like the Rams.
Agreed. So we agree on that one. Moving on to the next game, we have the Baltimore Ravens versus the Denver Broncos. A little bit of news and notes. Lamar Jackson's dealing with a little bit of a back injury at this point. They were kind of questioning his availability this weekend. Something to keep an eye on just in case he can't go. This would change this game drastically because Denver's actually playing some good football. Teddy Bridgewater is protecting the football, throwing the football around just like he did in Carolina, as well as when he did it over in New Orleans. And then the Broncos defense has been playing lights out this year. Von Miller looks like he is rejuvenated this year.
Yes.
My pick for this week, I've got the Denver Broncos winning this game. Even with
Oh
Lamar
wow.
Jackson on the field, I still think the Broncos defense is going to get it done in Denver. Fletch, who do you have?
I thought I was alone in this. I am going with the Denver Broncos as well. I do think at home plays a factor in this game, especially with the altitude. It always does. And then you are playing somewhat of a slightly banged up Ravens team. Obviously, running backs are an issue, but they've kind of righted the ship there, if you will, a little bit. Obviously, Lamar Jackson is probably going to be your leading rusher this year, but at the same time, if he plays or not, I do think Denver pulls this off. This is Denver's first test, so we are truly going to see how good these Broncos are because they are 3-0 against 0-3 opponents. Every team that they played this year has yet to win a game. One of them is playing right now in Jacksonville, so we'll see if they can pull it off against the Bengals and finally get on a W on the board. But with that being said, I think this is a big test for the Broncos. I think the Broncos are up for it, and playing at home plays a bit of a role in this. This one may be on TV quite a bit, being a 4:30 game. So for those at home, tune in. But I do have the Broncos. An interesting fact about the line on this one: we have mentioned lines a little bit today in our show. The line is even, with the over under being 45 total points scored. So should be a good game. It's supposed to be a tight game, and I'm glad you picked my Broncos as well, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, we're going to see exactly who the Broncos are after facing 3 winless squads. They're going to get their first test of the year. So we'll see
Yes.
just how good that defense is, or maybe it was just looks a lot better when you're facing a bunch of winless teams. Moving on to our pick. Next pick, we have the Las Vegas Raiders on Monday night versus the LA Chargers. Chargers look good. They got the win against Kansas City. The Raiders have been playing lights out most of the season so far. For me, I've got the Chargers, the home team, winning this game. I think Justin Herbert does just enough to get it done. Mike Williams has been nothing short of amazing this season. I think he continues on. Fletch, who's your pick?
We finally differ. I'm going with the Vegas Raiders. Derek Carr mentioned it today. Playing in Southern California feels like a home game for the Raiders. There are a lot of leftover LA Raiders fans that still live in that region, maybe even more than the Rams and the Chargers. So when they play in Southern California, there's a lot of Raiders fans that come out to support. You may hear that when we watch the game on Monday night. The reason why I'm picking the Raiders is this. I don't know how long I've been watching the Chargers historically choke, but I just have a feeling they may choke again. That is my reasoning. They are both good, very good teams. I think it's going to come down to the end, and if I had to pick a team that's going to pull it out, I'm going with the Raiders.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. I think Chucky would be very, very pleased with that pick. Moving on, we have a very interesting game. I think it might be one of the more interesting games this week. We have the Carolina Panthers against the Dallas Cowboys. Both teams playing good football at this point, although Dallas kind of stumbled off at the very beginning. Um, but the Panthers have looked very, very strong on both sides of the football. Dallas is kind of turning things around with a very strong offense. For me, I have the Carolina Panthers going on the road, winning this game in Jerry Jones's house. Fletch, who's your pick?
Rolling with the boys on this one. We're going with the Dallas Cowboys. The Panthers are really good. We roll out our power rankings every week. They have been literally knocking on the door for the last 2 weeks now for me to put them in. I'm pretty sure Panthers fans at home are like, why the hell aren't you putting them in? But they very similar to the Broncos. They haven't really faced a true test. Maybe the Saints, but we don't even know which Saints team that is. Jameis Winston look amazing against Green Bay. I think he looked terrible against Carolina. So I don't really know necessarily how good this Carolina team is. That's kind of my reason for that. And then unlike the Denver Ravens game Baltimore Denver game that seems a little bit more tight, I do think the Cowboys defense actually is going to be somewhat of a deciding factor here. And I can't believe I'm saying that, but that defense is actually playing very well this season. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's maybe the rookies that they've brought in. I know Diggs at cornerback from Bama is playing very good. He had a lot of good moments last week in the second half. If you watched that against Devontae Smith, where he essentially second half seemed to shut him down every time I looked up. And then also too, Micah Parsons being a rookie there out of Penn State. Those two young guys, I don't know if it's them kind of interjecting a little bit of life in his defense. They've always had decent linebackers there, but it was also always a secondary that was very porous or open, if you will. It seems like you can get open on this team at any point, but I think Diggs has really played a role in that not happening. Obviously, with the offense, you know what you're getting against a very, very good Carolina Panthers defense. I do think this will be a close game. I do have the boys winning.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, when you spend your first six picks on defensive players in this last year's draft, you better hope that your defense plays a lot better this season.
Yeah,
So the Cowboys definitely looking good, but again, I still have the Panthers winning this game. Number five, we have the Kansas City Chiefs coming off of a rather disappointing performance going on the road to Philadelphia to face the Eagles. Uh, really, Mahomes did not look great last week. He looked very similar as to what he did in the Super Bowl, kind of running around, throwing it around, kind of trying to do it all himself. But the big difference being in the Super Bowl, he was actually hitting his receivers' hands and they were just dropping it. Last week, he was throwing it to the other team. So,
yeah.
again, kind of a mixed bag there. The offense is still super great, super good. For me, I still have the Chiefs winning this game because we saw just how bad the Philadelphia looked last week against the Cowboys. Fletch, who do you got?
I have the Chiefs as well. I just think they're still a good team. They've probably had the toughest schedule so far. I mean, just looking at who they've played. So, I mean, you have was it the Browns, the
Hmm.
Bucks, and then the Chargers.
Yes.
All of which I think right now a lot of people would probably say all three are playoff teams. Possibly, I don't know how people feel about the Chargers, but they do look like a formidable playoff team this year. And then the other two are actual like legit title contenders with the Browns and the Bucks, with the Bucks being defending champs. So, I mean, I got the Chiefs winning this game. I think they bounce back just fine. I think they'll be fine in the long run. It just shows us Pat Mahomes is human, man.
Yeah, and again, just like you mentioned, the schedule itself was a little very tough to begin with. We'll see as it
Yeah,
eases up to see what kind of adjustments they can make on the defensive side of the football as well as offense, kind of reel it in a little bit and get back into form and maybe potentially push themselves. Because currently 1-2 in the basement of the AFC West, a very
yeah.
very strong division again this season. So we'll see exactly what they can do. Moving to our last game, I believe it is the Sunday night game. It is the Seahawks versus the 49ers. For me, I went to the well last week with the 49ers and I lost. I'm going to go back there again because I think they just can't lose twice in a row. I've got my 49ers winning. Who do you got?
I got your 49ers winning too. I don't trust Seattle. And as we talked about last week when we did our top 10, the Niners are one of those teams. They just have an identity. Win or lose, they have an identity. You know what you're going to get. You're going to get hard-nosed play on defense. You're going to get a running game on offense. And you got Jimmy G playing as good as mistake-free football as he can play. Debo Samuel's been playing well. George Kittle, you know what you can get out of him. Brandon Ayuk has come on strong after sitting week one. I just, I like this team. I like the Niners. I just don't see them losing this game as well, man. I got them winning.
Yeah, and I would agree with that as well. And if you want to join in on this Pick Six competition, we'll be posting this on our Facebook page as well as our various other social media platforms. Just simply put your picks in the comments, or even on this YouTube channel, put your picks in the comments, and we'll add them to our chart. We will see exactly how well you do against us. Again, both of us went 5-1 last week. Hopefully, we can get our first 6-0 week this coming week. One of us will, one of us won't. We'll see
Yes,
what
sir.
happens. Let's move on quickly to our NFL top 10. I will start things off at number 10. I have my 49ers sitting there. I know they lost last week, but it was a difficult opponent. I still think they sit nicely at number 10. Fletch, who do you have?
Well, we're gonna mirror our number tens, man. Same reasons. I mean, we'll take a couple stats back for the Niners, but overall, very good football team. Again, they have an identity. They know what they're gonna do out there. I like them as a team. I do think that at the end of the season, they'll still be around. As of today, I do have them tenth.
Hey, something we agree on is always easy to do. At number 9, I have the Carolina Panthers, and I know they haven't really played the strongest competition yet, but they've looked really, really good. Obviously, they still without Christian McCaffrey. We'll see what Chuba Hubbard can do this week. Fletch, who's your number 9?
Yes, sir. My number nine is actually going to be the Los Angeles Chargers. I really like the win against Kansas City. I like the way Herbert's been playing. I like the way the defense has been playing. You got Austin Eckler, and then obviously the receivers, man. I mean, what else needs to be said? That's one of the best receiving cores in the league. Mike Williams has always had the talent. Now he's healthy, and he's been playing unbelievably. So and Keenan Allen, I mean, he's been actually been going under the radar, but he's had some really good games as well. So both of these guys doing well. Herbert playing well, defense playing well. Just a recipe for success. I got him at number nine.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Again, their offense looks really, really good. Defense is a little bit banged up injury wise. We'll see if they can get healthy and really continue that streak in a very tough division, as we mentioned earlier. For my number 8, I have the Baltimore Ravens. They're kind of hanging on for me. Again, I was the last one to put them in my top 10. It took me an extra week beyond you. Again, Lamar Miller injury news. Hopefully he is healthy and he can play, but overall their defense is still strong. Their offense is kind of turning it around in the passing game, but I like them at number 8 right now. Fletch, who's your number 8?
My number eight is actually a newcomer in the top 10 this week. I'm going with the Green Bay Packers. I think they kind of found their mojo a little bit. I got them. I got them here, and it kind of attributes to what was that the Niners that they played against, right?
Yes.
Last week. Hell of a game. A hell of a game. And I'm excited I got to see the whole thing. It shows the go you, man. You give Aaron Rodgers the ball back with any time left, and you better hope and pray. That's all I got to say. You better hope and pray. He had 37 seconds left and drove his team down the field to get in field goal range and sealed the game. If that's not great football, I don't know what is. That was very good. Ever since they lost to the Saints, they've been looking pretty solid over the last couple weeks, and I think you'll see a lot more of that. We know them as being a title contender. I think they've been in the NFL Final Four the last 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, and just can't quite get over that hump. You know Aaron Rodgers is going to lead his team to the playoffs. I just don't see him not doing so at this stage in his career. He's been there every year for the last few years now, and the pieces around him are really good. The defense is actually still pretty good as well. So I'm rolling with the Packers actually at 8 after that big comeback win against the Niners at the last second there.
Hey, I like that pick so much, I made them my number 7 team.
Ooh,
Just
okay.
like you mentioned with Aaron Rodgers, we're actually seeing the real Green Bay Packers throw week 1 out. That one's just a side note. That doesn't matter at this point. He was really looking forward to a 16-game season. This extra game kind of threw him off a little bit. So we'll push that to the side for now. But again, they're really turning around on offense. They look like the Green Bay Packers that we know and that we have seen play far into the playoffs, like you mentioned. I have them at number 7, just one spot sooner. Who do you have at your number 7?
I actually have those Baltimore Ravens that are also in your top 10. I moved them. I think I moved them up a spot. They had a very good win against the Lions. You would really expect for them to kind of impose their will on the Lions, but this team showed a lot of grit, man. And then obviously you got Justin Tucker that put them over the edge there with the record winning or record field goal from 66. So I mean, granted they needed that to win, but also look at Lamar Jackson's heroics towards the end of that game as well to put them in position to kick that field goal. So that just goes to show me, man, no matter who they play, if it's a NFL game, you still got to show up and suit up. The Lions are gritty. I'm not saying the Lions are a good team, but the Lions are gritty. So the fact that they were able to, pull off a win, the way that they did just shows me how good Baltimore can be, when necessary, when the game is on the line, when you need a big player out of your big time player. They showed that for me, and for that reason, I got him at 7.
Agreed, and we saw that when they played the Chiefs when Lamar really had to push them down the field. He did
Yep.
exactly that here again against Detroit. And just to your point for Detroit, not the best team in the world, but they're definitely playing tough. Who no matter who they play, they are going to be a hard out for whoever. Moving into number 6, I have the Arizona Cardinals, 3-0. They look great. They'll be playing probably, maybe our best team. We'll see how our rankings pan out this week, but they have been playing great football. Their defense can be a little questionable at times, so that's what keeps them out of my top 5. At number 6, who do you have?
I got those same Arizona Cardinals. Very, very good team. I think I put them in a top 10 a week after you actually. I think you were a little higher on them starting off than I was. I'm on board now. Kyler has been amazing. He's definitely an MVP candidate this year. And then just overall, top to bottom, man. Again, so we kind of mentioned this. They have an identity. They are a solid football team. They spread it out. Any given receiver can go off any given week. And then also too, the defense is decent, but there's a lot still to improve on that side of the ball. But as they're playing right now, that's something that I think can be fixed throughout the season and at least improved. But we knew this team was going to rely heavily on the offense after bringing in the coach there, drawing a blank on his name, is it Lincoln Riley? After bringing him in, so this is kind of what you expect.
You mean Cliff Kingsbury?
Yes, the other coach from yeah, you got it. Yeah,
They might
Kingsbury.
bring in Lincoln Riley, you never know, but as for right
Might as
now, he'll
well.
stay in the college ranks.
But yeah, that's my number 6. Got the Arizona Cardinals.
No problems there. For my number 5, let's go ahead and see what we can do here. I have the LA Raiders, or Las Vegas
LC.
Raiders,
There you go.
they're playing great football. They have moved up my rankings quite a bit. Uh, they're surprising. They're a team that I wasn't really expecting to play this well this early, but they are playing some very good football. Fletch, who is your number 5?
Man, we're on the same page right now, man. I got those Raiders as well. They just look good. They really do. Max Crosby actually looks like a possible defensive player of the year candidate. And then on top of that, too, Derek Carr looks like the offensive player of the year candidate. Leading the league in passing, I want to say about 1,200 yards through the first 3 games. And the teams that they have beat are also to be of noted as well. I mean, I can see if you're 3-0 against, like the Broncos we talked about, who are not in my top 10 for the simple fact this is a power rankings. You have not beat anybody really. So I can't really have a lot of weight on your wins where I can with the Raiders. Obviously, these two teams are in the same division, so we'll see really how good both teams are. As well as the Chiefs, as well as the Chargers, who are both in our top 10 in our power rankings as well. I really like the Raiders though, and I just like what they're doing, and they have a very talented team actually on both sides of the ball. If you really take a look at some of those pieces.
Yeah, absolutely, and they continue to play well, and we'll see just how well they do against the other top team in the AFC West against the Chargers on Monday night. For my number 4, I have the Cleveland Browns. I think I had them at 3 last week. They fall just a little bit, just because some of the other teams ahead of them are still a little bit stronger, at least in my opinion.
Yep.
Great offensive run game. Defense is stellar. They played the Bears last week, which Matt Nagy did his best impression of how to not be a good coach. So at this point, I like what the Browns are doing. I have them at number 4. Who is your number 4?
glad you mentioned this, Clark. We're gonna pump the brakes really before I give you my number four. What the hell is going on with Chicago, man? You give Justin Fields his first start, and you go out there and do what you did. I'm not saying Fields is to blame fully; he is somewhat to blame, but you can. I mean, the game plan wasn't there. You're playing against a good opponent. I don't know what was going on there. It just felt very like they were not prepared. I don't know if that is Fields or not, and that might be the reason why Fields wasn't a starter. But I just want to mention that it's kind of weird. Let's just keep an eye out on that moving forward. I know Nagy said at this point any one of those three quarterbacks that they have could start, so just be on the lookout for that. However, segueing that back into our number four, Clark, we're on a roll, brother. I got the Browns at four as well. We had him at I had him I want to say at three as well last week. Got him at four this week. Really nothing that they did wrong. Is I have a team that kind of snuck in into the top three due to their performance above them. It's the only reason why I still like that team top to bottom, and I think once they get the receiver core fully healthy again, then you'll really see that the full version or the final version, if you will, of that team at some point in time in this season.
Yeah, agreed. And they are playing some really good football in the class of the AFC North at this point. I truly believe that they should be able to make their way back into the playoffs pretty easily as long as that
Hmm.
run game can stay healthy.
Right.
Moving on to my number three, jumping up quite a bit, at least in my rankings, is the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen looked quite amazing in a game that they were not supposed to really destroy Washington that bad, but they
No.
did. He looked absolutely dominant back to last year's form. Fletch, who's your number three?
My number three is I don't know how surprising this is, but again, just like Kansas City last week, take a loss, you gotta take a step back. I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at number three. It
Mm,
wasn't so much that they lost; it was how they lost. It seemed like the Rams were just the better football team, top to bottom. Last week, I had the Bucks at one and the Rams at two because I truly believe these were the best two teams in football. I somewhat still believe that, but I do believe that that secondary there in Tampa Bay is something to keep an eye out on. It's something we did not mention in the podcast on our news and notes. Is Richard Sherman is now signed to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as mentioned on his own podcast. So if you're a Richard Sherman fan, check out his podcast. Obviously, check out ours. But he announced on Twitter that he will be reporting news about him and that you will get the first scoop about him on his podcast. I honestly love it. I honestly love it. That's classic Richard Sherman for me. But going back to the Bucks, the reason why I mentioned him is that is a problem in that on that team. We mentioned how well rounded that team is, and I mentioned last week the Rams and the Bucks have very good offenses and very good defenses. They also have very good or special players on offense and very special players on defense. However, there's really not many special players in the Bucks secondary. A lot of it's all in the front four, if not all of it. So I think it showed against the Rams, and I think they were able to expose that, and I think that's the reason why I do have the Bucks taking a step back.
hey, nothing wrong with that. I had them taking a step back as well, but only to number two, making my number one the LA Rams. The most complete game or most complete team as of this moment. The Buccaneers have a little bit of problems on defense. The Rams not as strong as last year, but they're still playing very, very good on the defensive side. And Matthew
Mhm.
Stafford and his little Cooper Cup getting that breakfast in. Those breakfast meetings are paying off in spades at this point. He is leading receiver in the NFL. Fletch, who is your number two and your number one?
Yes, sir. My number two, and I'm going to talk about these guys for a hot second, is the Buffalo Bills, man. After that week one loss against the Steelers, it seemed like a lot of them, the Packers, and a couple other teams, I think they just had to shake the cobwebs off, man. They just didn't look good week one and then come around, look at them week two and week three. I mean, I understand that we putting a 2-1 team at number two in our power rankings, but at the same time, I mean, look at what they're doing. I mean, would they put up 43 against Washington? And I think Josh Allen's, I want to say, he had well over 300 yards and like four touchdowns. Fantasy owners of Josh Allen, I know you loved him this past week. It's a they're a very good team. They're another one of those teams. They have an identity. They're not going to run the ball a lot. They'll run when they need to. They have some very good receivers. You got Stephon Diggs, who obviously is the best receiver, and then you have Emmanuel Sanders there. You have Cole Beasley there. I mean, Josh Allen has guys to get the ball to, and then on the defensive side. we kind of mentioned in the previous podcast a few weeks back. I want to say during either our NFL kickoff show, I want to say that was the show, and we kind of mentioned a few of those young defensive pieces that they have as well. So, I mean, shout out to the Buffalo Bills riding the ship. The last 2 weeks they put on a show, 35-0 against Miami week 2, and then put up 43 against this Washington team that's supposed to have a formidable defense. And I mean, just made them look like they don't belong on the field with them right now. So. For that reason, I got Buffalo at 2, and then yeah, the best team in football right now, man, the Los Angeles Rams. Had them at 2 last week, move them up to 1 this week with a big win over my previous number 1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and it simply goes back to the fact again, great offense, great defense, special players on both sides of the ball. The difference between them and the Bucks is really that secondary. The secondary is really good. Obviously, with probably the best corner in football on that in that secondary, along with some other guys like Taylor Rapp back there. I forgot his first name, but Johnson, number 43, back there as well. If he still wears the same number, I know a lot of these defensive guys are single digits now, but nonetheless, they got some very good safeties back there, along with Jalen Ramsey shutting down half the field, or at least your best receiver most of the time. So. And that was they did not have Daryl Henderson, if I'm not mistaken, right?
They did not last week.
Something to be said there. So just be on the lookout for them moving forward. I do think this is probably the best team in football. They are still my pick to come out of the NFC as they have been since day one. And I still think they can do so, especially with the play behind Matt Stafford. One person to be mentioned out of last week's game that showed up, and we were kind of waiting on as football fans, to be honest with you. I know I was, and that's Deshawn Jackson, and he's still fast as he ever was. So that was definitely good to see. I want to say he had 2 touchdowns that game.
I think he only had one, but it was a very long touchdown.
Yes. Oh, it was one that was near touchdown, and they ended up finishing the drive with either a run or a short throw or something. I think it got down to like the 5. You completely right.
Yeah, I believe that was the drive that they threw to a wide open Cooper Cup because no one's
Yes.
figured out that Cooper Cup is the number one guy there yet, which is shocking to me, but hopefully defenses will figure that out. But here is our top 10 for the week. Our top 5 kind of jumbled a little bit, but all the teams are there. It'd be interesting to see what happens this week in the NFL and how our rankings go. And speaking of rankings, now we get to the final part of this podcast. We are going to celebrate our 10th episode, and by doing so, I will be doing my personal top 10 sports movies of all time. And
Nice.
uh, you don't know anything about it. This is the first time you've heard about it. I wanted
Yes.
to keep you on the outside looking in, mainly because I wanted you to kind of critique it here and there. We're going to kind of speed through it a little bit here, especially through the 10 through 6, because it's really the top 5 that matter more often than not. So, at number 10, if I had a drum roll, I would do the drum roll.
I got
But
you.
number 10, Love and Basketball. This is a movie I watched
Ah,
back in the day, and it's one of the classics, at least for me. Watching two young lovebirds kind of grow up through the sport of basketball, both go to USC, and kind of really just kind of grow up through life and try and figure out just how their relationship was going to survive through all the different trials and tribulations that came through them. But definitely one of my favorite movies. Omar Epps is in that movie. Um, Another actor that we'll be talking about a little bit later, hint, hint, in one of my other movies. But at number 10, I have Love and Basketball. I assume definitely maybe one of your favorites as well.
for sure. I love that movie, man. Shout out to Omar Epps and Sanaa Lathan. They played a hell of a role in that movie. Yeah, yeah. That's a classic, man. I get very very good choice.
Yeah, definitely like that one. At number 9, Hoosiers. Another basketball movie. It's a movie that I grew up watching as well. Absolutely, it was an interesting movie just simply because it was one of those trials by a young team that just out of their element. And I think one of my favorite parts is when they went to the new stadium and the tournament championship, and he had them measure the hoop from top to bottom, and they figured out it's the exact same thing as their one at home. So they're
Hmm.
nothing different. It's just a bigger stadium that they were playing in.
Right.
But absolutely one of my favorites. Hoosiers, definitely a rewatchable movie for sure.
Yes.
Moving on to number 8, Remember the Titans. One of the classic football movies when I played in seventh and eighth grade. It was a movie that I think we watched 4 or 5 different times, just about every other week. Definitely one of the greater movies when it comes to dealing with race and all these different scenarios there. Absolutely phenomenal. I think Denzel Washington, one of his best performances. Just really, really remember watching that movie and enjoying it quite a bit. Um,
Hmm.
but definitely number 8 on my list. Again, when you see my top 5, you'll see exactly why they're in my top 5. These
Okay.
ones are these are nice. They're good, but they don't quite make the cut just because of my personality. At number 7, A League of Their Own, a phenomenal movie.
Ah.
Tom Hanks, one of the better roles, absolute comedy all throughout. One of the better
Hmm.
ones, definitely based off a true story. Absolutely phenomenal roles by everyone involved. I love the story behind it as well. Definitely do a deep dive into that back in the day. But definitely one of the more funnier movies that are out there. Definitely enjoyed A League of Their Own. And at number 6, just on the outside of my top 5, White Men Can't Jump.
Ah, classic.
Absolutely love this movie. Uh, just two basketball players that you know, just kind of pull shark their way and, maybe get in some trouble, maybe not, just kind of, comedy throughout. Woody Harrelson, I think this is the first one that I first movie that I remember seeing him in, and he's been one of my
Same.
favorite actors ever since. So definitely, White Men Can't Jump, definitely rewatchable. But now the top 5,
Give
the
it to
5
me. Let's
that
do it.
matter.
Let's do it.
At number 5, technically it's a sport, depending on what channel you're watching it on,
Okay.
but it's dodgeball.
Ah,
Absolutely
very good pick.
love dodgeball. The amount
Yeah.
of the amount of quotes that I can remember from that movie is just insane, and it is the start of the reason why my top 5 is going to be very similar esque when it comes to comedies, because that is my favorite genre. But absolutely love dodgeball. Can watch that over and over and over and over and over again and not get old of it at all. Ben Stiller and company. Oh, love dodgeball. You know,
Yes. Ben
yeah.
Stiller, Vince Vaughn,
Oh yeah.
Jason Bateman is actually in that movie. If people don't remember, he was a
Yes.
commentator, color commentator during the dodgeball matches. Dodge a wrench, you could dodge a ball, right?
Yeah. Pepper needs new shorts. Yes. Absolute classic Chuck Norris, classic thumbs up at the end. Oh yeah.
Yes,
Patches O'Houlihan. The list can go on. We could be there for hours.
we
Moving
could.
on to number 4, Happy Gilmore.
Very
Absolutely
nice.
love this movie. Adam Sandler. Bob Barker is in this movie.
Hmm.
Epic fight scene there. Absolutely love this movie. It is, again, one of the more rewatchable ones, and one of the ones that you just love to go back to because it's during the heyday of Adam Sandler. Not that he's
Yep.
doing terrible stuff now, but this was back during the heyday of Adam Sandler, and
Yep.
you can't.
Everyone has their prime, Clark. You're not right. I mean, you're not wrong. You're not
Yeah,
right. You're not wrong.
I'm not right either. That's fine. I'm sure Adam Sandler would agree. At number 3, Space Jam. The original Space Jam, not this
Okay.
current Space Jam, but the original Space Jam. Clearly, obviously, I grew up being a Michael Jordan fan, watched all of his career as much as I can remember anyway.
Yeah.
Um, just absolute classic. The ability to use other athletes in that movie, as well as Bill Murray and the comedy of the Looney Tunes.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's classic. Whatever. I haven't watched the new one. I don't need to watch the new one, but I'll stick with the classic. And again, another very rewatchable movie in and
Fact.
of itself.
A lot of
At
good
number
stories behind that as well, by the way. I encourage people to do a deep dive on just some of the behind the scenes things that happened on that Space Jam set. There were legendary pickup games, if you will, on that set. But I just want to mention that for our sports heads at home. That's a kind of a something that I found out recently that I dove deep into, and I actually enjoyed every bit of what I saw and read. So I figure you may want to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Any type of documentary like that would be absolutely amazing. I remember they were talking to Kevin Costner during the Field of Dreams game, and he was just giving all the insights of all the things that happened on the movie set as well. So
Right.
anything that you can pick your favorite movie, you can get the deeper insights. definitely go do that. Number two, just missing the top spot, Field of Dreams. Speak of the
Nice.
devil himself.
Good pick.
I was actually watching some of the clips on YouTube. I've been kind of jumping in and out of movies. Gangs of New York was another one that I've been watching clips of as well. Definitely love that movie. But Field of Dreams, being a baseball fan myself, uh, just love the story behind it. Love the ability to see, father and son reunite in a very, very different way. Being able to watch that game or earlier this year was absolutely phenomenal as well. But definitely one of the better movies. James Earl Jones, classic part in it. Ah, love Field
Yes.
of Dreams. But number
Yes. I
one,
figured that'd be high for you.
it would, yes, absolutely. Number one, and to fill out the rest of this comedy, even though Field of Dreams, there's a little bit of comedy in there, but not, I wouldn't call it a full comedy.
Right.
But number one, Major League. Absolutely my favorite sports movie of all time. Just rewatched it the other day. Uh, oh my goodness, this the amount of quotes that are in there. Just the scene where he's going around the field talking to different players, trying to
Uh-huh.
figure out the pros and cons of each. Just absolutely amazing. Uh, uh, One of the better pieces is when they're in the locker room and they're talking uh, to the hitter that can't hit a curveball, and they're asking about Jobu, and the old pitcher's talking about his religion being Christianity, and they're going back and forth. He's like,
Uh-huh.
it said something about Christianity not being as good as Jabu, the religion of Jabu, and the old pitcher said, "Are you saying Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?" So just classic, just out of nowhere. This is one of the better movies that I have seen. Comedy galore, up and down.
Yeah.
I'm sad that they made a second and a third one. The second one's not as good
Okay.
as the first one, but definitely my top 10 for sure for Major League. Um, again, Fletch, I want to thank you for being my co-host for 10 straight episodes. Maybe on the 20th episode we can do one of your favorite top 10s. Um, so hopefully you can put together a list for us. But at this point, I think we are going to wrap it up here. Um, Once again, I want to thank every single one of you that has watched or has listened to us. Again, if you're not sure exactly where to go, simply go to anchor.fm/aka sports or go to facebook.com/aka sports FB. For now, my name is Clark Heron, aka the Hairy Hobo, and we're out.
Peace.